You must be from Åre then. No.
From Åre?
Yeah.
No, not really.
Bad joke. Soon everyone speaks English. That's good. We have to train. That's bad. Speak English. It's soon a universal language for the whole world. More and more people interact over the borders. So
when we start completing then let's see.
Oh. Okay. Hi, everybody.
hi.
My name is Kim. So we're kind of going in something largely different. So Mara and I do completely different streams of research using very different types of technologies and understanding and stuff. So I'm more into research biomechanics. So really looking at how the body moves and some muscle function. So just to give you a little idea of who I am, because I always like to know, I guess when I go to talks, who I'm speaking to. So yeah, so as I said, my name is Kim. I'm actually from Canada, so from the French-speaking part of Canada. So I studied physiotherapy at the University of Montreal. So if sometimes you don't quite understand my English, you can say, oh, it's just because she's French. So it's not you, it's me. Okay. And then I actually worked in physiotherapy practice for about 1.5 years, 2 years. So working with more into sports people and everyday people as well in just clinical practice. Then I actually moved to New Zealand, so that's actually where Martin is from. But he's from the north. I lived in the south, so it was kind of cold and wet, but it was good. So I went to the University of Otago, and that's where I did my PhD. So I studied, as I said, into biomechanics and muscle function using EMG technologies, which also I'll show a little bit later on. And then I moved to beautiful sunny Östersund. So I've been here for about just a little bit over 1.5 years now. So I've been able to extend my research a little bit and go more, actually a little bit more into sports performance as opposed to clinical sides of things. So I'm all the way from over here, and then I went all the way down over here, so I couldn't get any further away from home. And then I came all the way up here. So yeah, so don't ask. And I actually don't really like to travel, so we're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. Okay, so as I said, these are basically in a summary of my areas of interest. So I'm a calf muscle person, or Wadenmuskulaturen, so this guy back here. That's what I really enjoy to study for some odd reason. And I use EMG technology, which basically involves putting some electrodes on your muscle fibers that can record, if you want, the electrical current that goes through to activate your muscles. I've also used some isokinetics, so I don't know if Knatman took you into the...
I actually forgot that too.
Okay, so the two researchers you are talking to today, but I actually do have a picture later on, and I think it might actually have Knatman's calf muscle on it, so it's payback. So it's basically a machine that isokinetic means same, kinetic means movement, so same movement, so it's the same velocity, okay, as opposed to isometric, where you're just pushing and nothing moves, so you're standing at the same length. And then you have isotonic, where you're always pushing at the same force. So those are just muscle terms that we kind of tend to use. I also use some 3D motion analysis. So I'm assuming Knutman did show you that. Yes. So that works with basically red light that is sent to some markers that reflect back. And then by capturing with these 3D motion camera system, you can reconstruct in 3 dimensions the body movements. So I'll show a little bit of that later on. So basically like this guy here. So you see, it kind of looks like he's flashing. That's because if you take a camera with a flash, then actually the little balls that this guy has on him reflect back, so then it makes the picture look kind of cool. So I've used that recently to look at some running biomechanics. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And also with some, of course, being at the NVC, look at some skiing performance. I'm also very much into, well, recently to jump and stiffness measurements. So that's just how our body utilizes the kind of like tissue capacity, if you want. So we can store, you know, how we can store elastic energy. So your elastic bond, I think you guys call it. You can store energy and then release it, and it can be used to increase your performance. And then I also do some other more boring stuff, which is a lot of reading, going through what other people have done and trying to summarize it. So I won't go into that because that's not much fun. So yeah, so as I said, I'm more into the calf muscle. So I don't know if you know much about or how far your anatomy is, but your calf muscle basically has 3 components. So it has your medial calf, so up here. It has a lateral calf, and then it has a soleus, which is a little bit further down. And because of the way they are formed, they have different muscle functions. And basically, in even in strength training or in physiotherapy, if you change your knee angle, you can actually supposedly alter the contribution of these different calf muscles. So basically, I was interested in looking a little bit at that. And also, because the calf muscle is, if you want, it has developed with evolution. So originally, when we weren't upstanding, running, or walking, we didn't have such a long Achilles tendon here. And because the humans started to walk and stand upright, that actually developed into a long band to help us with our locomotion. So basically, as I said, I stick these guys on top of your calf muscle here. So then when you tell your brain to actually contract something, it comes down to your spinal cords, activates something in your spinal cord, your muscle here, tells your muscle to contract. So then there's a signal that goes across the nerve here, and then it goes across the muscle, and that's what we're recording here, and that gives us an information about how our muscles are functioning. So that signal over there is something that I try to analyze. So this is the isomed machine depicted. That's not happening yet. So, but yeah, basically we can configure it, and as you can see here, you can just test the ankle. So we can do this also to test knee function, like this, or you can use it for also for your hamstrings or your quads. So there's different muscles that you can actually go and investigate in here. So this is Chapman. So Chapman is kind of like our guinea pig here in the subject. So he does all the different little studies, and he helps when the machines aren't working. So he's a really great guy. So yeah, and he serves as my poster boy. He's my favorite poster boy. So basically, this is one of the studies that I did, that we set up participants in the isomed room, so on the isokinetic machine here. And then basically, if you see here, your ankle is kind of strapped up to a pedal. And I was, as I said, interested in looking at 2 different knee positions, so with the knee straight, or I like to think of it in a slightly more functional position, so the knee at 45 degrees. And basically, I was looking at people pushing down the pedal 50 consecutive times. So it was more of an endurance task. So to look at if we change the knee angles, and with some surface EMG on here, if we can change the way that we're activating or selectively fatiguing the calf muscles, to probably look at techniques that we could increase in endurance training, for example. Oh, go the other way. And then, as I said, I was also interested in looking at difference between lying down or sitting to standing. So, of course, if you're lying down, then you don't have the weight component. So presumably your calf muscle also acts differently. So that's a little bit of the studies that I've been doing. And with that, I integrated some Martin. So Martin is my second poster boy today, as you can see. So basically here is like a combination of everything that I do. So I use some 3D motion analysis with some EMG that Martin's not wearing on this picture. And also down here we have some force plates, so you can actually record the ground reaction forces that are going on during this test. And this was a standing one that basically people went up and down on their toes as many times as they could in 2 different knee positions, also to look at the fatigue within the calf muscles. So I won't bore you with everything, I'll just tell you what the results are. So basically, what I tend to find is that there is actually no marked effect of knee angle on the relative function of the calf muscles, particularly when we're talking about endurance. Okay, so you can slightly influence the amount of muscle activity that you're getting in these submaximal tasks, but overall, if you're doing knee straight or knee at 45 degrees, there's not a big difference between the two. However, we do see, or what I tend to see, is that the soleus muscle, so the one that is the deeper one, and that is only below the knee, that one does tend to work a little bit more in standing. So if you are looking at training your endurance function or your power function of your soleus muscle, you should try to train them in a standing position versus sitting or lying down. And yeah, so basically your training for endurance should be in standing with more or less influence of the knee, so it doesn't really matter what knee position you're using. And then my second, any questions? No? Okay, cool. And then my second, I guess, bigger research project that I kind of completed last year was looking at the differences between elite and amateur orienteer runners. So basically I went down to Gothenburg, and this was a collaboration project with the Swedish Orienteer Federation. And basically they came up saying, okay, well, we don't have that much money, but we're really interested in looking at, or finding out why do people, or how do they adapt to running, for example, on the road versus running in the forest. Because when you're an orienteer, you have to run on a whole bunch of different surfaces, right? So I thought that was really interesting. I'm a runner. I tend to run more on the road, though, because I'm shit in balance, I'm shit in everything. Throw me in the forest and I fall over. But I thought these guys were fantastic people to work with. So I won't really go through here, and I kind of told you what I was looking at. But basically this was kind of like a 3-part project, so I thought it was pretty cool. So the first one was field-based, and basically what we got people to do is that we got them to run 2K time trial. So really go as fast as you can, and then they had these different paths, so for 2K. So they did one in the road, which was basically out and back. So they had one in the pack here, and one out in the forest. And just because I thought this was really cool, because I'm not into all these gadget things, but these orienteer people are. I didn't even know you could do this. I thought it was awesome. Yeah, so these are my subjects, and they're running. I think it's great. I was like, yeah, this is cool. So yeah, so basically this is what they did. So this was in the pack. They ran 2K here, 2K on the road, and then 2K in the forest over there. And then basically we just wanted to look at this one. Okay. So we were looking at just measuring heart rate variables and using GPS, just how fast they were, how long it took them to run on these different surfaces. Yeah, and that was just some pictures that they took. So as you can see, this was kind of like our different surfaces, if you want. So this was more kind of like the road, this was more in the path here, and this was in the forest. The second component was basically we simulated the same thing, but in a more laboratory-based environment, if you want. So basically here they ran, this was our simulated road, this was our simulated path here, and this was our simulated forest. And you wouldn't know, but this is actually on top of the cinema. It's on the roof of the cinema, which is pretty cool. But yeah, and this was down in Gothenburg, so basically it was on 20 meters. And we had set up, I don't know if you can see here, but there's kind of like some cameras going all the way around here. And this was our 3D motion setup for outside. And basically we wanted to look at how the elite ran on these different surfaces with 3D motion analysis and how the amateurs ran on these 3 different surfaces. And then we also stuck a whole bunch of electrodes on them to look at how their quads were working, how their hamstrings were working, how their calf was working, how their glutes were working, and how their tibialis anterior, so the one that does dorsiflexion. So this is how they look like. So this was done outside. And of course, because it's better if you have these markers stuck right on the skin, they had a very fancy getup. And as the testing went on, this thing got shorter and shorter and shorter because you had to adapt it to different people. So, yeah. But it was better. Well, I'm not going to say anything. So that, and this was the EMG that we had set up on them as well. And with that, we also did some jump tests. So I know that for sports like you guys as well, you need a lot of power. And jump tests are quite a good way of determining different functional characteristics of your legs. So basically, we got them to do squat jumps, which is basically when you're just standing in one position and then you, boom, jump as high as you can. We got them to do a counter movement jump, which is you're standing straight and you go down first, and you do what we call a counter movement. So you go down first and then up. So that's more of a how you can use your concentric, eccentric to help you jump higher. Now we also did a horizontal jump. So basically we're to look at how far you can jump forward. And then we also did some hopping tests to look at some stiffness measurements. So I won't show you the videos, but basically by doing it on force plates, you can get a good idea of how much power people are using. And then we also did some running economy tests and some VO2 max tests. That's not my field at all, so I'm not going to talk to you about the results because, yeah, but that's some physiology-based stuff which we thought was pretty interesting to take as well. Okay, so what did we find? You guys need a break? Do you need some blue light? Okay. I won't talk about, basically this just shows the heart rate was here in all the slides. You see the elite will be in blue and the amateurs are in red here. So this is over 2K. All the athletes were about at 94, 90, 93% of their heart rate max, which I thought was, which I thought was pretty good of them to really be able to give so much on 2K. So this just shows that they did go all out. So here what we see, and of course what we would expect, is that in all conditions, the elites went faster, which of course you would expect because of the better ones. But however, what was interesting is that as you went from here, which was on the road, to the path, to the forest, the relative difference between them became bigger. So if you want, the elites were better able to maintain their pace when they went into the forest as opposed to the amateurs, which I guess is not necessarily a novel finding. It's not like, oh yeah, I guess it makes sense. If you're good in orienteer, you're a good runner in the forest. But it's never been shown before. No one has actually looking at how people run in these different areas. So basically what it's telling us is that if you want to be good in orienteering, then you should do a lot more of your training on the path and in the forest than you should on the road. Because even if you're fast on the road, you might not be that fast in the forest. So that's a little bit what we can get practically from this information. So this is a little bit what I'm telling you. And the other thing that I guess you can think about is that these, for example, these 2K loops that I showed you, if as an individual you can pinpoint where your weakness is, that can actually help you in your training on how to get better in your own weakness as well. So as part of regular testing or routine training, you could also see how you're progressing, I guess, in your own training, being very specific to, road, path, and forest based, right? Yeah, and basically what was interesting is that on this short distance, the same pattern was seen, where that this is just a 20-meter sprint, so as fast as you can across this 20 meters, that the elites were, this is meters per second, yeah, so you want a higher meters per second here. So the elites also were faster in all three conditions. However, now the relative difference was only from road to path. But then here, they were basically, the elites weren't substantially faster than the amateurs when they were sprinting, if you want. And the reason that we thought behind that was because when you're really sprinting in the forest, there's only a certain limit that you can get to before you actually risk to injure yourself, right? Because then you get a little bit not as comfortable running. And that actually we saw during our data collection. So this is in the middle of our data collection. So this guy is actually one of the best orienteers. And this was one of the amateurs. So we had two falls. Is this the same one? Yeah, that's a low one. So he's just face planting with about $4 million worth of equipment right now. And we're all like, okay, are you okay? Yeah, okay. Is the equipment okay? Yeah, okay. So. And now for the 3D data collection. So basically this is kind of a little bit what it looks like at the end if you want. So after you've stuck all the markers on and then you reconstruct your 3D motion guy and then you can analyze what he's doing. I haven't gone to analyzing all the data yet, so I can't really tell you guys what's going on yet. But I just wanted to show you what we can do with 3D motion capture. And basically a lot of times what we're interested in looking is how much vertical displacement you get when you're running, because that the lower this is, the more energy you're keeping, right? Because you want your energy to be transferred in the forward direction, and you don't want to be wasting your energy going up and down when you run. So it's the center of mass or the pelvis displacement in the up and down direction. And often the other thing we want to look at is that when you're foot striping here and when you're pushing off here, what is your leg doing? So basically looking at your foot, ankle, knee, and hip joints. So those are some of the things that I want to get to look at and that I won't necessarily talk about today. And basically, because I don't want to bore you guys to death, I'll just get straight to the results of the jump test. Was that actually at the end of the day, what we did find was that the elite orienteers were actually less powerful than the amateurs. So they didn't jump, for the squat jump concentrically, they couldn't jump as high and they developed less power than the amateurs, which to me was actually a little bit surprising because I thought, oh, well, they're elite athletes. They should be jumping higher than the amateur athletes. But then again, when you think about it, most of these guys are highly trained and they're endurance-based trained. So they do a lot of their running outdoors on long distances. So of course, their muscle fibers are adapting to the fact that they're doing endurance-based training, which was reflected actually by their squat jump performances. What was interesting though is that when you went and asked them to do this counter movement, so when they could actually go and use the stiffness component, they jumped just as high as the amateurs, which showed that they could actually use this stiffness component or this pre-stretch augmentation to help them jump a little bit higher. So from a neuromuscular perspective, they could tune or use this muscle function a little bit more efficiently than the amateurs could. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.